Welcome to today's webinar, Understanding Aged Care System Fees. I'm your presenter. I'm not your presenter, I'm your facilitator, Nicola Graham, and our presenter is Nicola Beswick. So we like to start our programmes with an acknowledgement of country, and in the spirit of reconciliation, MS Limited acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So it's my great pleasure to hand over shortly to Nicola Beswick. Nicola is a financial advisor, mentor, confidant who empowers people to create a financially certain future free from stress and uncertainty. She's got many qualifications. She did start in a different area, in the intellectual property area, and moved over into financial planning through her own personal journey, which I'll let her share with you. She is an accredited aged care professional, certified financial planner, self-managed superfund specialist advisor. She's studying her Masters of Financial Planning, and she's also chairwoman of the Pro Bono Financial Network. So we're very, very lucky to have Nicola with us here today. So I'm going to now hand over to Nicola, and again I encourage you to type in any questions that you have and we'll answer them as we go along. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you, Nicola, as well. Hello everyone, and it is lovely to be here with you today to talk through something that is a very complicated system. I know the financial world can be a bit complicated in itself, and the aged care system and the aged care fees in particular are complicated again. So today I want to spend a little bit of time just working through some of the real basics of this system, and then give you an idea of what you may be facing or your friends or family members. So as Nicola mentioned, I am the chair of the Pro Bono Financial Advice Network, and our mission is to really help connect those that are going through financial hardship and particularly through a health crisis like multiple sclerosis, and pair them up with financial advisors that are willing to assist on a pro bono basis. Such a fantastic honour to be part of this organisation and really help give back to the community in the way where so many things are needed when someone's going through a health situation or health issue. As Nicola's introduced, I am a financial advisor. I work with a company called FMD Financial, and I have a very long list of qualifications. But I think the most important thing, and the reason why I'm sitting here in front of you today, is because of this very special person in my life. This is my dad. My dad was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a number of years ago, and he lost a lot of the use of his right side, and was one of these really fortunate people that went in and had an income protection policy. So that really changed his life from a financial perspective, and really motivated me with going from intellectual property law into the financial planning world. And it certainly would be one of the best decisions of my life, and has brought me to here today to be able to sit here and share some of the knowledge that I have gained over the years that I've had from being in the financial planning space. So today, what I really want to focus on is understanding the aged care system, because it's very much a complicated path, and we want to try and break down some of the barriers that come with understanding the system. I want to go through first what we call the ACAP process, which is how you get into the system, so to speak, in terms of getting some support from the government perspective. And then also look at the different types of care that you can get. So whether that's going into an aged care facility, so a residential care service, or things like retirement villages, and also at-home care. So if you don't want to leave your home, there are some packages out there available. But that all hinges on that initial assessment that you get from the government, which is that ACAP process. I do reference a couple of fees throughout this webinar. They are current as at the 1st of July 2021. They do change, so if you're listening to the recording of this webinar, please bear in mind that some of these fees and charges do change depending on what's happening around the world. So I just want to make that note there. So the first process is really being assessed to be able to get into a position, whether it's the home care package or the residential care. And this is really done through the government, and you can go directly to the My Aged Care government website page there to be able to get this initial assessment done. What happens is you end up having initially booking an appointment with a team member through the ACAP process, and you can call them on those numbers or through that website there. What happens is they then come out and assess what your current situation is and what type of support you may need from a particularly the physical, the mental side of things, and what level of service you can get through them. So whether that's being eligible for a home care package or the residential care package. Once you get an approval through them, it can take a few months for them to have that meeting with you, put everything in together and give you that assessment. But once they've done that and they've worked through the process, you get an official letter or correspondence from them, which confirms your approval for the particular service that they have deemed to be appropriate or where you could be placed. So once you get that approval from them, then that's when you look at getting yourself placed within a particular service or go on a waiting list. Now, sometimes you can do these things in conjunction, but it's best to understand exactly what you may be entitled for from a government support perspective first. Once you've gone on the waiting list, then you'll be received an offer of a place and acceptance from a facility or a service provider if you're looking at that home care package. And then you can place yourself in terms of reviewing strategies in terms of how you manage your cash flow in association with the fees and costs associated with that. And that is the benefit from where financial planners and people within the finance area can assist. I'm not going to talk about the strategies to manage cash flow today. Everyone is very unique in terms of their entitlements, and it's a very complicated situation. So today I just want to run through exploring the basic fees and what you can process, get potentially in pay for, depending on what your level of fees and costs are and where you go. So if we start with the residential care service, so this is where you're going into an aged care facility. There's 4 very basic fees that people are faced with when they go into these facilities, and each of them pay for certain things. So we've got the accommodation payment, which pays for someone's accommodation. There's a basic daily care fee that everyone will pay regardless of the situation. There's a means tested care fee, which is actually income and asset tested, and this is where things can get a little bit complicated depending on everyone's situation. And then there's what we call an additional service fee, and that pays for luxuries, which is exactly what I've got on the screen there, and that can vary from organisation to organisation or facility to facility. So what I want to do today is really just describe these 4 fees, and so you can understand what they are.
We've just got a question coming in, which was just, do you pay for components?
That depends. So it's a good question. Everyone pays the basic daily care fee because that's got a particular assessment through it, and even if someone's just on the age pension, for example, then the government have worked out the specific amount that is. The means tested care fee is a variable fee, and the amount that someone pays on that does vary depending on their level of income and assets, as does the accommodation component or the accommodation payment. If I go to that one, you can see exactly when some people may or may not pay that as well. So it's not a very straightforward yes or no answer, or it's very much it depends. And I think this is where getting some assistance from an advice perspective can become really important depending on your financial situation. So I haven't answered your questions precisely, but it is complicated. So if we look at the maybe the first accommodation payment, now I've got at the bottom there people under particular thresholds may not need to have to pay a particular lump sum. Generally, this payment is set by the provider or the facility, and they have to publish the specific amount that they will be charged. And you can find these directly on the facility's websites or through the My Aged Care website run by the government. Generally, you're looking at a room that's around the $550,000 mark. Now, this doesn't have to be necessarily paid in one lump sum. Again, it does come down to your particular situation. Some facilities can charge more, but they do have to get approval from the government. And as a person potentially going into a facility, you do have the choice of paying this either in a one lump sum, which is government guaranteed and refundable, or you can pay it as a daily payment, which is a bit like paying interest on a mortgage. Think about it as potentially buying a house up front and putting a deposit down, or paying a mortgage at a set interest rate. Now, if you pay that daily accommodation fee, that's not set by the facility, it's set by the government, and it's currently just above 4% per annum. Now, that part's not refundable, unlike that lump sum. Now, some people may or may not have that amount of level of assets to be able to put towards a accommodation payment, and that's where there's particular assessments around what type of facilities or offerings different accommodations can provide to those people. So there are concessions available for people in that financial situation. Now, the basic daily care fee, this is the second of those 4 fees that I had on that table, that spreadsheet there. This is paid by everyone, regardless of what level of assets or income you have. And it's really determined by the single age pension. And the current fee is just below $53 per day. which is equivalent to 85% of the full single age pension. So everyone will pay that fee because the government has taken into account what someone will receive from the single age care age pension payment. Now, coming back to that table, and we are looking at the last of those four because I want to go back to the means tested fee a little bit more. This is the additional service fee, and this is very much covers your optional extras that I have there, and is set by the facility that someone goes into. It can include a whole range of different things, such as if you want to have a glass of wine with your meal, if you want to have a foxtail, hairdressing services, all these different things. So it is variable, and facilities will have this information available to you when you're going through and looking at these places. Now, this would be something that very much you'd want to have a look at and make sure that you would be getting the services that you're paying for there as well. So just a little bit of a tip there. And then the last fee from someone going into an aged care residential facility is this means tested care fee. So that's the third of the four fees that I had up on that spreadsheet. And this is the one that's the most variable and the one that does change person to person to person, depending on your particular financial situation, your living arrangements, your relationship status, and things like that. It's not a very simple calculation. It's a formula that I've got up there, which is based on a level of income and a level of assets divided by 364, so how many days in a year, less what the government contributes, which is currently just below $59 per day. So what happens with this is the facility or Centrelink or the government will calculate your level of income and your level of assets based on this formula. And depending on where you sit, below or above that government contribution level, will depend how much you actually pay or you don't pay. So if you're below that, then you're potentially not going to need to pay any extra over and above the other fees that I just talked about, but you may pay more depending on the assessment as well if you're above that amount. The good thing with this is everyone eventually becomes equal, particularly for people that may pay quite a large amount under this calculation. There is an annual cap, so depending on your assessment and if you're deemed to have to pay quite a large amount, once you've reached the annual cap, so over a 12-month period, you don't have to pay this fee anymore. And that's also capped at a lifetime amount as well. So if you're in a facility for a really long period of time, you don't have to keep on paying this fee. Once you get to what is currently just over $68,000 in your totality over your lifetime of remaining in that facility, then you don't need to pay that anymore. So I know some people may not like going through the paperwork or disclosing information. It may mean that you have to pay a higher amount, but it does cap out eventually. Now, what's counted as income and what's counted as an asset, again, come back to your overall specific financial situation. It comes down to your living arrangements, whether you own your own home, whether someone lives in that home or not, and their status. It's a very complicated world, and I think that's where going and talking to someone in particular around your situation becomes really important, because today there's so many different combinations of how this fleshes out. I'd be here all day if I was going through all those different combinations. So again, I'd just like to say, reach out to someone and see if you want to talk about your situation in particular, and see if there's any specific strategies that can be put in place in order to see what you can do to minimise those fees, because there are things out there that can be done as well, but that's where seeking a professional becomes really important, because you don't want to do this yourself. So I hope that's given you a little bit of a snapshot in terms of when you go into, or you're looking at an aged care facility. It is a complicated world, and these are the 4 fees in a very short summary in terms of what you'd be looking at for paying. Sure. Yep.
Do you get that back when you die? So does your family inherit that? So that's fully refunded.
So if you pay that accommodation bond in a lump sum, so I very much was very diplomatic when I said when you leave the facility, so whether you actually leave and go somewhere else or whether you pass away, the facility does refund that. If you pass away while you're in that facility, that bond is refundable. There may be a few minor costs and expenses that have been incurred that the facility deducts, but on the whole, yes. And it does get passed to someone's estate, so distributed in accordance with their will. Yeah.
And Lynn has asked, assuming that for many people that 550 or thereabouts comes from their house,
yep.
What if one partner needs residential care and the other partner's not is well enough to stay at home, so they can't realise that asset?
Yeah. So that's a really good question as well, and that's where you would want to get specific advice with regards to that situation, because you don't want to feel like you have to sell the house in order to pay that lump sum and have your other person, your partner, for example, homeless. That's not a good outcome for anyone. So there are strategies and a different assessment in terms of what you could do. You might have other assets that you could put towards that payment. Yeah. And so there's in that particular situation, you may decide, depending on what someone else's assets are outside the family home, for example, you could look at that, but you want to make sure that you're not losing income to live on as well, because you've got all the other costs associated with day-to-day living and all those other fees as well. So in that particular situation, it's finding someone that understands your situation, understands what you want as well, because that's another big part of this. You don't want to think you have to do everything to pay that fee. You can still pay that part of the fee. You don't have to pay all or nothing. You can pay some, half of it or 3/4 of it, and pay the rest as that kind of interest or that interest payment. So there's so many different variables with this. So I hope that's answered your question.
So I'm sorry, just to reiterate then, that first question was, do you get the 550k or thereabouts back? Which I think that was quite obvious. And then what if one partner needs residential care but the other partner is well enough to stay at home? And Nicola was really just saying there's lots of ways around that, and you really probably need some advice to negotiate and navigate the best way. So I hope that helps everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah. So the next part in terms of when you go through looking at the fees and costs with the aged care is if you are well enough to not have to go into an aged care facility and have that constant care, but you want to have your own place, but potentially go to somewhere that you've got your independence. And this is where retirement villages and assisted living units come into play as well. You know, these are very much like owning your little pocket of your own place, and you've got your freedom, but it is a little bit complicated in terms of you are signing in with a contract with regards to the provider, facility provider, and there are specific payments that you have to make, particularly whether it's a lump sum, so that's the purchase price, or the entry contribution amount. Now, this isn't government guaranteed. It's a contract with the provider as well, and there are specific things around what you may get back or may have to leave. Now, I know some contracts have evolved over time, and if some of you are listening and are already in one of these places, you may have an old contract, which means that you may leave a portion of your contribution amount with the provider. There may be some exit fees associated with this. And unlike a lot of us that own our own properties and have our own house, you may not actually own the property. So this has complications as well, particularly you know, if you want to try and reverse mortgage or something like that. I know some people consider that as a funding option. You're entering more into a lease or a loan arrangement with a facility. So the big part with this is it is an option, but the range of providers that are out there and the different types of facilities and villages that exist are different and far-ranging. So I don't have a nice little kind of formula there to share with you, but this is again where I would say please read a contract, get some legal advice before you enter into one of these contracts, and actually understand what you're going in for, because you know, particularly unlike that lump sum deposit that you potentially pay if you go into an aged care facility, you may not necessarily get it all back if you go into a retirement village, and this can really disrupt the wealth that you may want to leave to particular beneficiaries as well. So I really encourage you to make sure you get an understanding around the particular contracts and what happens when you go in and when you potentially leave these facilities as well. So very key parts there with this advice. Now, the third type of care that you can look at is in-home care. And this is also part of what the government have provided to people. Now, there are different types of care packages that are available, and they go from 1 to 4, as you can see there, and this depends on the level of assistance that has been deemed by that ACAT assessment. And they, once they assess you, will put a specific level of care that you qualify for, and this depends on their assessment that they have for you and your ability to manage around the home, and that determines the level of assistance and support that you get. So that's why getting that assessment is particularly important right at the start, because then you actually have some idea in terms of what you might be eligible for. The important part to factor with this is there is no minimum age requirement to access this home care support. So I know particularly people with MS may not be what we would normally assume is someone in that retirement part of our lives, but really younger and needing that support. So please, there is that ability for people that may be in that age to be able to access that support as well. And this flowchart gives us a real assessment in terms of the steps associated with getting that care in place. So having your assessment and then getting placed on that wait list for services that can be provided. Now, you can also start reviewing facilities or service providers that are out there in terms of the type of packages that they offer. So once you get your confirmation from the assessment, you know precisely who you may want to have come and help you around your home and what they can offer you as well. So you can do some of these things in conjunction, and then you will get that provider to help you develop that plan, and you'll enter into that contract, which you then I would highly recommend you review on a regular basis, just to make sure that you're getting what you want and you're getting the level of support that you're ultimately paying for. Now, the fees associated with this type of care, so that in-home care, you pay two fees. There's the basic fee, which very similar to the other fee, which is based on the single age pension. Now, it is 17.5% of that single age pension amount. So that is the amount that you pay under the basic fee. And then there is an income tested fee as well. So depending on your level of income, depends on how much extra on top of the assistance you may have to pay to get the support. And there are set thresholds there as well. So again, very variable in terms of if your assessment's below a particular threshold, you don't have to pay more. If it's between a particular range, then you'll pay a certain amount, and then if it's above, you'll pay an extra amount. The good thing with this is these fees are actually capped as well, and you have that lifetime cap as well, so you don't have to feel like you're continuously paying for these things, particularly if you're going to be using their services for a long period of time, because there are those thresholds and those lifetime caps put in place. And this table here really dictates those thresholds that I was mentioning before in terms of the income threshold, in terms of how much, if you have to pay some or nothing at all, and this depends on your home status and your relationship status as well. So this gives you a little bit of a guide in terms of what you could be looking at. If I was to go to the previous slide, and you can look at those thresholds that I was talking about. So just give you an idea in terms of what you may be looking at depending on your particular situation. And there are some good things, and I just want to highlight some of the things that government does pay in terms of their subsidies, and this does depend on the type of packages that exist out there. So those 1 to 4, depending on your complexity and the range of assistance that you need. So the government does actually give us a little bit in terms of their subsidies and what you do get for going through this program as well. I know a lot of people who may not need to go through that, or don't want to go through that assessment and just get a carer in. You can actually do that as well, so you don't feel like you have to go through that assessment if you feel like you can manage from a cash flow perspective and understand the impacts from a financial side of things as well. So I've given you a little bit of a summary in terms of the 3 different types of aged care home support, whether it's going into an aged care facility and the fees associated there. So those are the 4 fees that you may or not pay, you may pay some on all of them depending on your situation. We've got the retirement living arrangements and those units, as well as the home care packages there. So those 4 different areas, but 3 different areas, sorry. But the important thing, and I hope you've picked this up through the conversation today, is everyone's situation is quite variable. And as much as I would like to spend the time going through all the different situations and scenarios, this is where getting support or getting advice from a financial perspective is actually really quite important, and creating that support for you and surrounding yourself with those people that are knowledgeable in this area, because it is complicated. I've really distilled into the key essential parts, but like some of the questions that have come up today, it can get complicated quite quickly, and that's where getting that specialised advice is important. So I highly advocate reaching out to someone, whether it be through the Pro Bono Advisor Network, and you can do that through these contacts that are on the page there, or you can come directly through to certain specialised people that focus on this area from an aged care perspective as well. So I do hope that that's really helped cover off some bit of the understanding that you may need from understanding such a complicated area in an area that we all may be faced with at some point at a time, whether it's ourselves, a friend, family member, and really just knowing that there are different things, and actually getting a little bit of knowledge to know that you need to get some support in a particular area more further. So I'm not sure if there's any more questions or...
Thanks, Nicola. I'm sorry, I'm looking just so that people can hear okay. Oh, we have got a question that's come up.
Yeah.
I can see it on your computer, but not on mine. I'll just check. But thank you, Nicola. Lots and lots of really good information there. So and plenty for people to think about. So I'm just going to run through some final housekeeping slides and just encourage you to type some questions in if you have any, just in the last few moments. So just want to remind you of some of the services that are here from MSL to support you. We have Allied Health working in NDIS and My Aged Care and NDIS Plan and Support Coordination. We've got a helpline service, our MS Connect. We've got the wonderful employment support, residential care. We've got peer support. So if you feel that you want to connect to somebody who may already be in aged care, for example, then we can certainly provide you with connection to somebody in a similar situation to yourself. And obviously lots of education, and we've got respite and care support as well, amongst others. So plenty of services here to support you. We also have a number of free resources. We've got a great series of podcasts. I've just been speaking with Nicola that we may get the opportunity to do a financial podcast as well, and some financial literacy podcasts. We have our In Touch newsletters and a huge webinar library of just about anything that you can think of that you might need to know. I think we've got a webinar on it, and we've got online tools, and obviously we have our live webinars and Facebook Lives, etc. And if you would like to contact us, if you've got any further questions, or if we can help you in any way, please call the 1800 042 138. That's our gateway number for all of our services. I'm just going to very quickly check that if there's been any other questions typed in. No, just lots of thank yous. A couple of people have said they may send an email separately as well. So Vanessa's asking, are the home care packages operated through the local councils?
I think my understanding is you can actually get some additional support through local councils. I know that they may have additional funding and support. Some councils have services that they can assist through these services as well, and there are also a number of privately owned providers out there as well. My best advice is to find someone that's going to give you the things that you need, rather than just going to somewhere because it's cheaper, because that's really what you want to do, is make sure that you're getting that support, and actually have that tailoring to what you want.
Julie has asked if we can show the pro bono contact page again, which we will do. And Marianne's making a very relevant comment that there is a significant disparity between My Aged Care and NDIS in terms of means testing.
Yes.
Because the NDIS is not means tested, is it?
No. And I think that's because of what those different packages are tailored towards. The aged care providers is really covering everyone and their entitlements. So it is very much that's reviewing on a user pays versus who can't pay and who needs the assistance from the government, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, and we are going through, unfortunately, an ageing population. It's a very, very tricky time for people who are in politics, and I don't envy them. So
thank you everybody for joining us today. You will find a recording of this on our website if you need to review anything, and feel free to email any questions to us and I'll forward them on. Thank you, and a big thank you to you again, Nicola, for all your expertise and time. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and lovely to see you all today.